Hello everyone, I'm Gabriel Sanchez for Border Arts Network, and I'm here for a special interview with a really good friend of mine and a border artist herself, Kathleen Carlson. Kathleen, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you had the time to do this. I want to go ahead and just start straight ahead. The first question that I wanted to know, or the first thing I wanted to know about you as an artist, is what motivates you? What is the purpose of your work? Is there a in particular person or individual or circumstance? Is there somebody who motivates you or inspires you to create?
Yes, it was my mother. She was a poet, and she wrote poetry for us, the 3 girl children that she had, and she always encouraged us to be active in the arts, reading and writing and forensics and public speaking, writing songs, playing instruments. So that brought out the creativity that was in us.
So your mother is the main influence and the person that kind of pushed you down that road.
Yes.
And I'm glad she did, because having worked with you on publishing your latest collection, which is Spiritual Reflections.
No, it was Émigré.
Sorry, I read Spiritual Reflections. So this is Kathleen's latest collection of poetry, Émigré. And why did you choose the title Émigré?
Well, this is a time when I think of my past, the people we left behind, the country that I could have lived in, the influences of that culture, Aruba, and what I went through in my childhood and later on in adulthood. And and living here in the Valley, I'm surrounded with current immigrants. I'm an old immigrant, and so I'm used to people saying, they listen to me talk and say, "You're not from around here, are you?" Well, yes, I am. I'm an American now, but I'm as American as most Americans are, coming from another place or a generation of other Americans. And the Valley is a lively place where people are coming and going and exchanging ideas. So, and this picture here of the blue, I forgot the name of this, the blue, good grief, what's the name of this bird?
Oh, the bird? Oh, I'm not a bird connoisseur.
The green jay.
Green jay.
The green jay. That's a symbol of the Valley, and how the people are on the move. It's going someplace. It may not have a destination, but they're going.
So one of the things that, as an immigrant, right, like a lot of, I guess you could argue most of us here in the U.S., as an immigrant, what do you think that status affects, or how does that affect or influence your work as far as your art?
Well, the United States is full of, I think, restless people. They're always trying to improve or change. What's on the horizon, what's coming up, what's in outer space, what's beyond space. So it's a natural thing for this country to be peopled by people who are on the go. And the first immigrants, and the next bunch of immigrants, and then the next bunch of immigrants, and we're all on our way someplace. We don't know exactly where we're going, but we're going to go.
Right. So how do you describe your work up to now in general terms, or maybe in more specific terms? Because you have 3 books, right? So your first book is Deep Night.
Yes, Deep Night.
Which I love the title. It sounds really interesting. And this was written
in college.
When you were in college. So
Mm-hmm.
this is your very first one, and then Spiritual Reflections.
That was about maybe 10 years ago. I actually started putting it together.
So 2015, around that time. And then Émigré, which is the latest.
Yes, it's only a year old.
A year old.
But it took a
It's
long time to
baby.
put it together.
Yeah, well, the work is monumental. Plus, it happens to be the biggest one, right?
Yes.
The longest manuscript that you've put together.
Uh-huh.
So, again, how would you describe your collection of works in general?
Well, they're personal revelations and interactions with Americans, understanding the culture and trying to figure out who I am in the context of this country. There's stuff about my family in there and other, relatives and boyfriends and dogs and cats and just the normal life of a human being.
Yeah.
I think it was normal, although it probably isn't as quiet because I moved around a lot in the United States and I interacted with people in New York and Chicago and California, here now Texas. So it's an interesting movement. But my relatives came from England and Holland, from India. Let's see, where else are we from? Oh, India, back to Guyana, where my parents were born and lived. So I don't know.
And that's where you were born?
No, I was born in Aruba.
Aruba.
Aruba, yeah, there's another story. My parents were born and lived in Guyana. They didn't know each other in Georgetown. And it's a small place, though. They moved separately to Aruba during World War II to get jobs with Standard Oil. And there was a hospital in Aruba where my mother worked as a nurse and my father was an electrical engineer, a draftsman. So that's where we started out. And then they wanted better jobs, more of a future, because Aruba is a very tiny little island, although it's fun to live in. The variety of life is pretty small. So they moved to the Milwaukee area and then outside of the Milwaukee area to get other cultures. But we couldn't find any Arubans, very few British people, and we had to eat American food. So that was a big change.
You make it sound like a burden. You had to eat American food.
We had to eat. Yep.
So what are you talking about? Like what? Like specifically that was different.
Well, there was no East Indian food in Muskego. It was mostly a German population, and Milwaukee has a lot of different cultures in it. But we were living on the outskirts, so I really like sauerkraut and schnitzel and things that show growing up in a European type culture. So it was fun. It was interesting, but we were always on the outside. You're not from around here, are you? That's a common question. As soon as I start to talk, oh, you're not from around here, are you? So, no, but it's too long a story to tell.
Right. So that brings me to this question. It might seem out of totally left field, but I think it's really relevant because it's about creativity and where creativity is going as far as humanity, which is AI. Okay, artificial intelligence. It's a big question in the creative field because a lot of artists feel very threatened by what is happening with all these software, all these companies that creating the software that is pretty much, some say, stealing from previous works to create kind of like a mix of a bunch of different people's works into a new creation. So we're talking about the large language model, something like that. They call them LLMs, where you type in a question and it gives you a whole answer. You can say, give me an essay or a poem or a story about this topic, and then it gives you a whole supposedly new creation. Same thing is happening with video, with images. Artists, when before they might be commissioned to create an art piece, now somebody can go on one of those apps and just get an art piece easily for free, actually. So, what do you think is the effect of AI, and is it a threat or is it something that could be beneficial in the long run?
Well, well, I had to actually look it up online to understand what it is, and then what people are for, why people are for it, and why people are against it. I think that's a normal thing to be afraid of what you don't know, but there was a time when people drove wagons with horses,
Right.
and when the the combustion engine came along, cars and Henry Ford and all that wiped them out. So there's a reason to be afraid of strange things and new technologies, but nowadays, we live for cars. We're not afraid of technology. And the fact that we don't know what's coming with AI, that really shouldn't stop us at all.
Right.
We're going to go into outer space. We're going to go outside the skin of the universe. We're going to do all sorts of things that people never thought of. And it's impossible until you do it. I think that's a quote from President Biden. And I like that. You never know what's going to come next, but don't be afraid. So AI, people are afraid that their identities are going to be stolen and their works are going to be stolen. But what did Michelangelo or any of the other writers in history? They didn't have AI, but they had the printing press. Boy, that was pretty scary. They're going to take my work and distribute it to the rest of the world. Will I get the credit for it? Will I be able to make a living on it? So, the printing press is going for it. Go for it.
Right.
All sorts of good things come out of change.
So never fear change.
No.
Innovation.
Well, you deal with it. You're going to deal with it anyway.
Right.
Good or bad.
Find ways to make it benefit you.
Yep.
That's good. What is your future plans for your books, your art? Are you working on a new manuscript? What is coming up now, recently, and far down the road?
Well, I'm writing poetry all the time. I just put them in little stacks, and then I separate them by year, so at least I know the context of what was happening. I don't have a plan for another book of poetry, but I'd like to do one in the future. I've gotten involved with a spiritual group, a Bible study group, and they have inspired me to write more spiritual matters, spiritual reflections, but not all serious. But I like the ekphrastic experience, where a person who may or may not think they're an artist or a poet, they react to something that they see, and they write something about it. You can write a poem, you can write a short story, you can even paint something from your reaction to the art. So that's ekphrastic. And I like those kinds of workshops, to sponsor them and to be part of it. People are always surprised at what they can come up with when they're challenged with creativity.
What would you say to beginners? And there's beginners of all ages,
Yeah.
right? There's beginners, people who become interested in the creative process, whether they're in their teens or in their late years.
Mm-hmm.
How would you encourage somebody who's trying to get their feet wet in the creative? So I guess that would be a way that you would encourage people, like through that
Through
ekphrastic.
Yeah, it's art inspiring art. So you never know what you're going to come up with, because it's an act of creativity. It's inspirational. We have this spark inside of us that our Father, God, put into every person, and it's got to come out. Maybe you don't have the opportunities that I had or the encouragement, but once you start, it's like a fuel. It fuels a fire inside of you that you've got to get it out. And for myself, I can say I would never stop writing poetry, no matter if it didn't get published, because it makes me feel alive. And if I stopped, I would either die or explode, because I've got to get it out.
Right. It's part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings me to the last question, which is, how would you encourage creators who might be thinking, you know what, it's pointless, maybe I should just give up on this, whether it's writing or any other creative pursuit?
Get off the fence. Fences hurt if you're going to be sitting on them for a long time. You never know what the future is going to hold, and you never know what influence your work is going to have on another person. So, okay, so you're not famous, you're not making millions, you're not going to show up on Oprah, but you could show up at your kitchen table. Your grandchildren might be inspired by what you do. You can show them a painting, and you can put them in the painting. Then they'll keep that as a treasure for the rest of their lives. And same thing, if you're a young person, when's the last time you wrote a poem and put it on a piece of paper and gave it to your grandmother? She will treasure that. You know that parents do that all the time. They treasure a sign of affection and creativity from their offspring. Well, you say, oh, Mom, my mom has thousands of poems that I wrote. Well, I'll put them in a collection. Her peers will be delighted, and she will be delighted that she can show them a collection of work that her grandson did. Same thing goes, well, all right, I'm a painter, not a poet. I write big things. I paint big things and artworks on walls. How am I going to get that marketed? Take a picture and send it in for a competition. Stand next to it and sing. Put that on your website, your Facebook page. Now you have Facebook pages. Or stand on the corner and hand them out. There are all sorts of things. Take it to a bakery, have them make up a sheet cake with your poem on it or your picture on it, and present it at some big event. So, or even a little event. There's a lot of ways you can be creative. And put art in your poetry book. Art, this is from my husband, took this photograph, and I used his Vernon. Sorry. His name is Bunyan Carlson. He is an artist himself, and a painter, photographer. What's his name? Here. A picture of a hummingbird that he took. So I didn't write a poem about a hummingbird. I just put his picture in. You can expand your influence by involving other people in your poetry book too.
So no reason to give up on your art.
No.
Just keep going.
Yeah. I bet you Michelangelo, when he was doing the Sistine Chapel, didn't really think it was going to show up on a computer. He didn't plan ahead. He just was, he was making this painting. He wanted to honor God. He wanted to make a living. And here we are, more than 1,000 years later, still talking about it. So that doesn't mean if you don't get onto Oprah this year, somebody isn't going to go back and look at that program and say, well, I could have been on there. I'll call Oprah up now. Maybe I can get an interview, like here, like with you.
Right, exactly. We're way better than Oprah. So, is there any last thoughts that you would want to leave us with?
Last thoughts. Don't give up. Encourage others. They'll say, well, I can never do a book like this. Yes, you can. It just takes commitment and energy and maybe some encouragement from other people. But art and expression are everywhere. Even this microphone, which looks kind of ugly and sinister, but you can turn that into a poem, you can turn that into a watercolor, a photograph, and sell it at an electrician show. Sell that photograph and make it really, really big and say the future is here. You never know what's going to happen to your artwork or what you're going to influence in the future. Okay.
Thank you very much for doing this. I
You're
look
welcome.
forward to the event. Again, the event, the book release is on October 19th. What time?
2 to 4.
2 to 4 p.m. So that's at the Barnes & Noble in McAllen on Ware Road and Expressway 83. And Kathleen will be there live, ready to sign copies.
Right.
And we're looking forward to seeing you there.
Yep. Thank you. I
Thanks a lot.
appreciate it.